webinar presented by the IET's Anglian Coastal Local Network, which represents members in Norfolk and Suffolk, part of East Anglia. And welcome also to folks from other parts of the UK and indeed globally. This is truly a global webinar with over 600 folks registered. So I'm delighted to welcome you all. I'm Kevin Foster. I'm chairman of the Anglian Coastal IET Local Network, and I'll be your host for this evening. I would also like to thank our outgoing chairman, Ian Buxton, for his sterling service, and I'm really glad that he'll continue to serve on the committee as treasurer. Now, just before introducing tonight's speakers and presentation, I'd like to mention our next webinar that we've just had confirmed. That's going to be on the 6th of August and will be presented by Professor Andy Sutton, who I know very well. He's a very engaging speaker and he's BT's principal mobile network architect. And he's going to give a talk entitled 5G Demystified: the what, the when and the where. Now, given the current debate around Huawei, 5G and COVID-19, it should be very topical. So back to this evening, I have to say that this is our most ambitious presentation and webinar to date. We're going to be streaming some advanced technology over Zoom, and I've been assured by our presenters that, Kevin, it'll be all right on the night. So to give us the best chance of success, please will you prepare yourselves as some degree of participation is required. We will leave questions to the end, please. And if you think of a question, please use the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen. If you waggle your mouse a little bit, you'll probably see the Q&A panel and the chat panel. So if you think of a question, please put it in the Q&A panel and not in the chat panel. And we're going to pick up the questions from the Q&A panel only. So do experiment with that. And if we don't get time to cover all the questions, we will find a way to answer those questions offline. Now, during the talk, the presenters will show a QR code and a URL to enable you to participate. So please will you have your phones ready. I think iPhone users, the cameras on those have a built-in QR reader. So simply point the camera at the screen when asked. Android users may need a reader app installed, but don't worry about that. The URL will be displayed. Now, we're going to be recording the presentation, which we will make available in the future on our local community site. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Doug Williams and Ian Kegel. Now, they're both researchers based at BT Labs at Martlesham. Between them, they have many years of experience working in the broadcast and TV fields in BT. And they'll tell you a little more of their background and their work throughout the presentation. So let's crack on, and over to Doug for the future of TV.
Kevin, thank you very much. Welcome everyone. We are speaking from Adastral Park. I'm Doug Williams.
And I'm Ian Kegel. And so if we see the picture of Adastral Park, we thought we couldn't resist working in TV, trying to be a bit ambitious, and rather than all talking on Zoom from our homes in these unusual times, we thought we'd try and make use of our facilities here at Adastral Park. This is our TV lab, where we do a lot of presentations, and indeed we're sitting here with the pink arrow points in the building on the right-hand side. Now, Adastral Park, as many of you may be aware, is BT's main engineering centre and our headquarters also for research and development as well. And indeed, we see thousands of different organisations come here every year, and we use facilities like this to demonstrate some of our research, but also as well as up-and-coming business solutions and products that they may be interested in to support their businesses. We have a number of different companies as well as BT on site here. In fact, over 100 different organisations, but BT is clearly the largest. At the moment, there are not so many people on site, but normally you'd find about 4,000 people here. Many, of course, with a few here, it's a bit quiet at the moment without most of them around. But other than that, we have many other facilities on site, including some of our operation centres for our UK networks, and indeed test and integration facilities. And we play a big role in the economy around here. So that's us here. But now we'll talk a bit more about where we sit in BT.
So that's where we are physically, broadcasting from Suffolk. In terms of the organisation, we're part of research. Research is a part of an organisation called technology, and technology works to serve the rest of BT, providing all the IT and everything that it needs, including innovation. As a TV content and comms team, which is where Ian and I work, most of our contact is with people like EE, with BT Sport, with BT TV, and with media and broadcast. But we could serve anyone in the company that needed us. Here's a little bit of an outline of what we're going to do today. The 2 asterisk items where we've got this URL called menti.com, that's where we're going to go slightly interactive. Please take part. It's much more fun for us if you do. Otherwise, we don't really know that you're there. I'm going to start just by reflecting very quickly on TV. TV's an awful lot of things, and when we come to think about this talk, we were wondering what has changed, what is changing, what's going to change in the future, what's the thing that we're going to focus on. TV is changing in all sorts of ways, as you can see, the way we pay for it, who the big players are, how we transmit it. Everything's changing around TV in many ways. But the thing we want to focus on, because we think it's a really interesting aspect, is that TV is becoming personal. TV was broadcast. The same thing was sent to everyone all the time. That's changing. You're getting TV when you want it, and you're able to adapt some of the TV in different ways nowadays. And that's what we want to focus on. We think this is going to be a continuing trend, and we want to look at the way that it is becoming personal, and also look at the way we have to produce it differently, because if we want it to be personal, we have to change the way we produce it. Just to give you some perspective, this TV was a very welcome addition to my home when I was about 10 years old. It was colour, that was a good thing. Had a big screen, from my perspective anyway, and it had 6 buttons. I never understood the 6 buttons because there were only 3 channels. Of course, things have moved on.
Yes, and indeed, I'll be teaching you just like eggs here probably, but looking across at the diagram here now, we see how some of the ways we might consume TV today. And I guess what strikes me looking at these is it's not just necessarily about the business models and clearly technology has made a massive impact here, both in terms of screens, in terms of the availability of delivery mechanisms beyond just through the aerial. We have the internet, we of course also have many other broadcast mechanisms available to us, but it's also about devices and the ability for the computing resource we have to be able to make the process much more flexible. The way we receive TV can be nowadays through social media, of course, through over-the-top applications, through additions, through players built on by public broadcasters alongside their traditional broadcast output. But I think one of the things that will come back to again and again and again is one of the key enablers behind this is the world of the internet, the web, and the web services capabilities we have to deliver at scale, both in the cloud, but also the devices we have, their ability to run web browsers and to be able to render a very high fidelity of capability on any screen they're connected to. And that's an important enabler we'll see more again later.
So let's get interactive, menti.com. If you go to menti.com, if you've got your camera, you can point the camera on an iPhone at this QR code, and that should take you through to a website, menti.com, where there's a couple of really simple questions. We're intrigued to know what you were watching last night. Now, from everything that we understand about the way people's behaviours with regard to TV watching are changing, it depends on age to a certain degree, with older people much more likely to be watching in the traditional way, and younger people much more likely to be watching with the new forms of TV. So I'm asking you, not generally, but last night between 8:45 and 9 p.m, what were you watching? If you were watching BBC One, I think it was The Repair Shop last night. Other channels are available. But if you haven't got a QR code reader, you could go to menti.com and just type in this 6-figure number. Now, I'm hoping that some of you already got there and started adding your results and telling us about what you were watching. I'm going to move now to the results page, and we'll see whether we have got any good answers. I'm going to first of all look at the age profile. So thank you very much. It's great that there are some people there and able to respond. Thank you. This age distribution is in 10-year age groups, and if everything was even and we had a distribution that was representative of the UK population as a whole, I'd expect to see this pretty level sadly dropping off as people were getting older. What this shows us is perhaps this IET audience is a bit overweight. Or perhaps I shouldn't say overweight. I don't know what COVID's done to you all, but perhaps this is what we know our audience is over-representative of people who are in the older brackets, particularly between 40 and 80. But of course, you are all very welcome. I'm delighted to see that we've got 2% of people who are between 11 and 20. That's great. The second one is, what were you watching last night? Now, you probably can't read these titles, so I'll go through them. The blue one here is, I wasn't watching anything at all. That's me. I wasn't watching anything last night either. And then the next one is, I was watching scheduled TV. But on this sample, even in this group, you can see that scheduled TV is on about a match with subscription video on demand, which is things like Netflix or Amazon Prime. And nearly as high are people who are watching internet video, things like YouTube and videos on Facebook. So you can see that scheduled TV is not the dominant force that it once was. Obviously, once upon a time, nearly everyone, if you're going to watch anything, you would have been watching TV, you might have been watching something you recorded. But that picture is changing and it will continue to change. I didn't know how that was going to turn out. Thank you very much for taking part. But you can see that the world of just pure scheduled TV has long since gone. If you go back to 1985, there was a BT TV service. It was run in Westminster, and it was basically a video jukebox. It enabled you, using a remote control, to select a film that you wanted. Sounds a bit like Netflix, doesn't it? But look at the date, 1985. Netflix kind of famously drove companies like Blockbuster out of business. 1985, here we have a service like Netflix. Blockbuster hadn't hit the UK high streets. So this was, to put it mildly, kind of ahead of its time. Kevin Foster, who introduces Mr. DSL in my eyes, and was pioneering a whole load of new technologies which enabled our pairs of copper wires to carry a lot more data. And part of the reason for that was to ensure that we could deliver video over our wires. And by 1994 and 1995, we were running field trials for video on demand in Kesgrave and Colchester. And Kevin was saying just before we came on that his house was the first house in the UK to be connected with ADSL. By 2006, that technology was mature enough for us to launch our own TV service. We called it BT Vision. It was quite a different thing at the time. It was a hybrid service. It mixed terrestrial broadcast for our scheduled TV, plus you had a personal video recorder in there, but you also had a video on demand service. And again, that's all run over ADSL. Every click makes me nervous. By 2013, we acquired some significant sports rights. Now, in the UK and probably in many territories, sports is one of the big things that drives people to watch TV. And building on that, building on the presence of a really substantial sports sort of catalogue that we could play, we started really innovating. And one of the things we did was push what we had going to a TV to other devices like tablets and phones. And here you can see the interface from a tablet. What you've got is the video that was broadcast to your phone being shown up here, and around it and across the bottom you've got some extra bits. This is a timeline, and actually because it's a tablet you could interact with this timeline and you could go back and say actually what happened at that moment. Go back and show me the replay from this incident at 12 minutes in. And this kind of ability to suddenly interact with the timeline and interact and have a personal experience of video was one of the things that we sort of were keen to innovate with BT TV. Similarly, you can have stats overlaid, which shows you things like that usually get shown by the pundits in the studio, but suddenly you could do this yourself. So you've got ball possession, shots on target, etc. We also were innovating in developing better pictures. So we focused on developing, we were Europe's first live UHD broadcaster. That's in 2016. We started our first UHD in 2015. We had a full channel by 2016. 2017 and 18, we were offering 360 views where you could go for some matches. You could use 360 views, which would put you at different positions in the stadium. And then if you were wearing a headset, you could view around as if you were actually sitting in the stadium. You could also view it with a tablet and a mobile phone, giving people a personalized, different experience of sport. Nowadays, last year we launched BT Sport Ultimate, and if you want the best experience that we can offer in terms of the best image and the best sound and the best interaction, you would use our BT Sport Ultimate product. That's got HDR, Dolby Atmos, and of course 4K. So now I need to slow down, because one of the things that I was beginning to show you there was that there's interaction, additional bits that you could do as well as the broadcast. When you start adapting broadcast and not just having one thing which goes to everyone, but having this base layer, but with additional bits of content, we need to call it something, because it's not just broadcasting and it's not just television. We need to have a name for it. Over the years, a few names have been tried. We tried some, 2001, 2000, they didn't really stick. But the ones that do seem to be gaining some currency now are words like object-based media and object-based broadcasting. I think these names were coined by the BBC. We're happy to adopt them as well. Whisper It, it's a name, it's a good name, it's useful to have names, but actually this is pretty much about delivering television using web technology, so HTML, Java and CSS and all those other things that we use for delivering web pages, we're now using to deliver television. I want to go now to the next stage, because we talked about object-based broadcasting. It begs the question, what's an object? What's a media object? Now, some of you, I'm hoping, on this call will know what a media object is. A media object is one of the bits that goes up to make all the television presentations that we watch. So I want you, if you don't know, to have a guess. What kind of things might I be thinking about? What are all the different components that make up a TV program that we watch? You may have seen some of them, you may have heard some of them on the pictures that we've shown so far. Again, you can go to menti.com. It's a different code this time, 890627, or you can use the QR code. I'm hoping that you'll be getting to that QR code and I'll be able to tab to a word cloud, which is some of the information that you're typing, the words you're putting in, to say, this is what a media object is. At this point, I should have handed over to Ian.
You can do. I was wondering if anyone spotted carrot, which I put in there earlier, which is just to confuse you. But it's looking good. So we're seeing quite a few useful terms there: audio, video, subtitles, graphics, metadata. That's really nice. I'll give it a few more seconds. It's really good having lots of you doing this, because it doesn't work so well about 3 or 4, but having 94 people contributing, that's great to see. It's also great to see some of the key pieces coming out there. EPG, multiple video inserts, that's really nice. Picking a few more. Background sound. Subliminal advertising, now that's nice. I haven't thought of that yet. we should be trying that. Yeah, really like it. Okay, I think you're well ahead of us here probably, but if you just maybe go to the next slide. Obviously, a key element of anything, live streams. So although they're not fixed in, they may not be fixed in time, the idea of being able to create a live stream as a background, as an object, is important. On top of it, you might insert extra video clips, replays, things like that. You might have text. Subtitles, really important for helping us to customize the experience to people who may need that. Then we have things like 2D graphics, the staples of sports broadcasting, and indeed the 3D equivalents that pundits will use to identify perhaps players on a pitch or particular moves. Then we have interaction opportunities. As soon as we allow people to customize things, perhaps we might have buttons and controls. And finally, you may not have thought of this perhaps, but real-time communication, also an important object we might want to consider. The idea that we may be able to allow people to have their video and multiple video chats with people like we are using with Zoom now, but while watching content, and that may be part of the experience rather than just a side channel as you might do today. So all important elements, just consider those as objects. I didn't see communication coming up much in the word cloud, so I'm going to have a think about that.
What I want to do now is look at the way those media objects are used to make television programs. For those of you, some of you may be from the BBC or be familiar with TV production, this will be very straightforward, but it's hopefully going to give everyone an idea of the way that we use these media objects to make programs. In the traditional way, we collect all our media objects, all the things that Ian's just talked about. We then make our program. Editing, I suppose, is what you'd usually do. And then we deliver it, and we send it via a broadcast mechanism, and it goes to everyone. Now, think about what happens if it goes to different devices. If you hit your TV, it looks great. But if you're watching a portrait on a mobile phone, then some things could have been better. If you've got text on that screen and you're watching it on a 50-inch screen, it's great. If you moved it down to a 5-inch screen and you're watching it in portrait, suddenly that text is probably a bit too small for you. So broadcasting is great, and let's not suggest it's not good, but it can be improved with web technologies. Object-based delivery, object-based production involves taking the same media objects, but rather than making a program, what you actually do is you package those media objects with their metadata, and then you send all of those packages with some instructions towards your clients who are going to receive them. It's a bit like receiving an IKEA package. You've got the instructions and you've got all the components, and now you need to make them fit your kitchen. Though in our case, it's making it fit the device or devices that you're watching the program on. So here we see the program is being adapted, the image at least is being adapted to completely use the screen appropriately. And if you had text here, perhaps it could be resized so that it was still visible. But you only do that if you've got the instructions about how to assemble this at the client end. And that's the difference between broadcasting, where you make your program and send it to everyone. With object-based media, object-based broadcasting, what you do is you send people all the components with some instructions, and your machine, your device, assembles them at the end. Basically, that's just the way the web works. That's what it does. But we're talking about this for TV-like productions, which are heavily narrative-driven. One of the ways we often look at this is it's a bit like sandwiches. It's the difference between a packaged sandwich, which you have no control over what's going on, and going to Subway, where you can say, yeah, I want margarine, I don't want butter, and I want brown bread, not white bread. Not white bread. You get to choose and make some selections about what is good for you. Perhaps there's some hints in there about what makes it good for broadcasting, or what we think makes it good for broadcasting.
Indeed. We'll do eventually. So, here we go. So I think, just let's summarise perhaps what we've talked about there. There's been several hints, as Doug says. So I think several of these should be fairly obvious, but if we allow objects to be specified and personalised and delivered separately to individual people, can you give us, thank you, then essentially adapting to the client technology is really significant there. You saw in the BBC slides about the appropriate presentation on the appropriate device. So that's obviously often known as responsive design, and so that's a key benefit we can achieve by doing object-based broadcasting, perhaps more cost effectively than doing a separate process every time for each of our apps. Similarly, we can respond to user preferences. We have the ability to change things, to be able to customize elements of the experience while maintaining within the narrative, within the story, within the live experience that the broadcaster intends for us, and within their style and their branding and their guide. And indeed, that's why it also talks about augmenting. So the benefits here is not to allow a completely flexible approach where everyone can take a box of Lego bricks and create an experience afresh every time of their own creation. This is about using the expertise and the professional experience of broadcasters, but allowing some flexibility within that. I like to think of a continuum, if you like, where control lies between the broadcaster and the user, and it's up to the broadcaster ultimately and the author, the creators of the program, to decide how much control is delegated and allowed within that process of maintaining quality and maintaining the experience. So hence it's about augmenting rather than completely replacing the traditional experience. And of course, interaction is key there. We can't really allow a personal experience without some level of input from a user at some stage. But it can go beyond just ticking boxes and selecting preferences at the start. It could be all about deciding how you configure your presentation, but it could be more than that. It could perhaps be about expressing your interest in a certain player, expressing that within a community, allowing voting or some element of contribution. Or indeed, as we saw earlier, it could be about communicating and sharing between participants visually and audibly, while also taking part in the content experience.
So we're going to move on to a bit where we show you some of the experiments we've done where we've looked at this more personal kind of television. So I'm going to go back quite a long way. There's only a few of them, but first one's just we're going to talk about is called Heaven and Hell Live. This was described as a postmodern game show. It was a mashup. Mashup word didn't exist then, but it was a mashup between virtual worlds and television. What actually happened was that you had some people at home were inhabiting avatars in this virtual world who were taking part in a game show And that game show was filmed and broadcast back to those people playing, but others watching as well. There was about 150 people in this virtual world, and it was broadcast live on Channel 4 in 1997, where everything, and the only way of making this work was with bespoke browsers and everything. It's quite an extraordinary achievement, and not one that's been massively copied. The next one I want to talk about is when you think about objects. One way of thinking about this is if you break down, if you take a very narrative-centered view of what's going on, stories have got beginnings, middles, and ends, you could argue. And perhaps that middle's got lots and lots of elements to it, you know, middle 1, middle 2, middle 3, different options. You can build stories in which they navigate different story paths, and it's called reconfigurable media. It's not often done, but we will come back to show you some examples which are being done. But back in 2006 and 2007, we developed a capability to create this reconfigurable media. And before, rather than me talking more about it, we've got a short video which will explain what happened in Finland in 2006 with a production called Accidental Lovers.
Accidental Lovers is a dark musical comedy series that can be changed in real time by mobile text messages sent by television viewers.
Aina kun päättää, että ei enää, niin sitten jostain ilmaantuu se ihan viimeinen kiusaus.
The love story introduces Roope, a rising Finnish pop star in his 30s. He lives a happy-go-lucky existence, but it's become a bit too superficial for his own taste.
Kumpikohan on lopulta helpompi nakki? Minä vai kaikki naiset?
Julia, a cabaret singer and visual artist in her 60s, has a colourful past in the music industry, the arts and love. A life that has left her with a feeling that true love is impossible. Or is it?
Mitäs unelmien täyttymisestä, mutta niiden tavoittelu voi olla mahtava seikkailu.
Both lead their own lives until they bump into each other as next-door neighbours in Merihaka, Helsinki. Who falls in love with whom? How will the lovers behave towards each other? How will they feel about their fate? And how will the love story end? That's up to the television audience, who influence the story through mobile text messages.
Katsoja lähettää tekstiviestin. Pääosa näyttelijä Kristina Elstelä Juliana tai Lorenz Backman Roopena vastaa tähän tekstiviestiin omalla ajatuksellaan. Ja se, mitä roolihenkilö ajattelee siitä tekstiviestistä, muuntaa juonen kulkua.
Mikä on keskeisin ero tässä nyt, kun ihminen pääsee osallistumaan?
Varmaan sillä lailla, että normaali elokuvassa ihmiset puhuu vasta kahvilassa jälkikäteen. Et me otetaan se elokuvan jälkeinen juttelu osaksi sitä TV-sarjaa. Eli ihmiset keskustelee siitä jutusta, mitä tapahtuu vanhemman naisen ja nuoremman miehen välisessä rakkaussuhteessa, niin ne arvot keskustellaan siinä. Ja silloin me tekijöinä ja taiteilijoina me reagoidaan siihen saman tien, niillä säännöillä, mitkä sillä leikkausjärjestelmällä on.
The countless variations of each 28-minute episode are made possible by a media database that responds to keywords in text messages. About 80 video scenes and 850 voiceovers are further regulated by a computer program that understands, for example, plot continuity, rhythm and mood. The narrative engine enables 12 plot variations and innumerable ways to construct events within each plot.
Rakkautta ei voi suunnitella. Silloin kun minä rakastun, se on aina sellaista, että minun pitää puuhastella jotain ihan muuta, lueskella runoja päivästä toiseen tai vaikka pimputella pianoa, niin sitten minä taas saatan rakastua. Voin siis rakastua vasta sitten, kun unohdan, että voisihan sitä vaikka rakastuakin.
Accidental Lovers introduces a new genre for television. It enables viewers real-time participation in a discourse about love and its values, in dialogue with the characters and each other.
So in Accidental Lovers, the objects, the media objects, were part of the story, and it gave you options of moving around it in different ways, traversing it in different ways. For BT, with our focus on not scripted drama, but the drama that's created by live events such as sport, we kind of needed to change tack and not look so much at that scripting of narrative objects, but look at the way that you can use the object-based approach to change the way that events are presented in order to better fill and better occupy the screens that you've got available. We did another project with these partners, BBC, CWI, Current Hago, Illuminations, a number of others. This took place over about 3 years, from around 2017, and this led to most of the good work that we've done on object-based broadcasting. A lot of it was centred and grew out of this. What we wanted to do in this project was develop some compelling examples of multi-screen TV. The idea was that multi-screen, with the ability to personalise it, should be a more engaging, immersive experience. We wanted to develop some useful software, we wanted to create these compelling examples, and we wanted to make sure that we did not ruin TV. We wanted it to improve and augment and not detract from what TV is already good at. And we wanted to create a delivery system which was built on technology which was reliable, scalable, and able to give us the synchronous experiences across multiple screens, which is actually a bit harder than you might think. We also wanted to understand some of the workflows that were required to deliver this, particularly for live production. We did this in a number of genres. The most significant, and the first one perhaps that we'll talk about, is sport. And I'll hand over to Ian now, and we'll look at what we did with motorsport and our example of MotoGP.
Yes, indeed. So some of you may have seen this before if you've worked with us, or even if you're part of Tourmers. But I think this is quite a nice example to show off some of the features of object-based broadcasting as we conceived in Tourmers, and indeed many of which we believe are significant and can carry forward into future products, and indeed are being used by inspiring other people as well at the moment. So what I've got here, I have I'm going to take a switch on my TV shortly, and just so I can show you my tablet. So let me do that. What we've got here essentially is I've got a TV on this left-hand side, and on my right I have a TV showing my tablet. So I've got my tablet down here, just so you don't have to worry about seeing the detail of the screen. It's just an HDMI cable going into my TV. So this is a multi-screen in-home experience that we created, and it was designed to show how a truly object-based representation of a live race could be delivered across multiple screens. So the idea was that there could be multiple phones and tablets around the house, and the main TV, and viewers, participants could use a combination of those to get a more personalised experience, so hence a much more personal TV. So the first thing you'll note, I guess I'd like to show you, is on the main TV over here, we have a typical sort of representation of the live race. We have a leaderboard showing the order of the riders. We have how many laps to go we have on the top. We have some logos. We have a hashtag. We have all the information that would normally supplement a live broadcast. That would normally be burned in and presented, and everyone would see the same thing. However, because it's object-based, essentially each of those elements is their own object. So I can get rid of them. I can hide the TV graphics like that. So this shows our fundamental base object. This is our clean feed from the broadcaster, if you like. So this is the foundation I mentioned earlier on the live stream on which we're going to paste our personalisation. So I'll put my graphics back. And on my tablet over here, I also have a more complex arrangement of objects, which can let me personalise my view locally. So if I could perhaps choose on my tablet which riders I want to see on my local screen. So I can choose I want to see Valentino Rossi. I've got a helicam shot here. I've got some timing information that's showing me the different timings data for all the different riders. I can scroll through that. Hopefully you can see that happening. And of course, that's personal for me. But if I perhaps wanted to look at see one of those riders and share them on the big screen with some of my viewing partners, I could choose to cast Rossi. And all this is done now essentially has instructed the main screen to show that media object. So that media object showing the bike camera from Rossi is now also being shown on the TV. And perhaps if I had another person with another device in the room, they could also share a thumbnail bike camera view as well. So it gives you an idea of how a simple reconfiguration of my media objects. Another very useful thing I can do, I've got my graphics on the screen here, but you can see the leaderboard's taking up quite a lot of space because I've got the full name of the rider, I've got their number, and I've got their logo and things. But actually, in an object-based world, I could choose a number of modes. So if I go to TV presentation on here, I don't know if you can see this on the TV screen, I've got a menu I'm in novice mode. If I choose to be in expert mode, for example, you'll see it now, that's now changed the layout of the graphics on the screen to a much more compact notation. An expert doesn't need to know the full name of the riders. They'll recognise them from the first 3 letters of their name, for example. And all the logos aren't so important. They just want to keep up with the action. Likewise, I could perhaps choose an intermediate mode which has some of that information on it. Similarly, graphics scale is an interesting one. So currently, the graphics are burned in at broadcast time, of course, and everyone sees the same thing. But I've got quite a big TV here, and that leaderboard's taking up a fair amount of space. But I could actually choose, perhaps, if I have the graphics small, I've got a 50-inch TV, it's about 49 this or so. I've chosen now to resize those graphics. So you'll see now they've contracted in size, and my leaderboard's much smaller down the left-hand side. I don't know how closely you can see this on your screens, but another neat feature we can exploit of that, of course, is we have metadata flowing into, also metadata objects flowing into our app here, and we can use that to specify how far apart the riders are on the leaderboard, depending on their position on the track. So you can see some big gaps emerging in the middle of the field there, for example. I'll put it on a medium scale, so you might see that a little bit better. So 2 examples, again, of how we're dealing with using graphics and the supplemental augmentation of our experience to create a much more personal effect. Another thing we can do, I can demonstrate this, hopefully, with a little bit of audio. If I turn the sound on, you can probably hear the background there. So again, our audio is an object, or two, in fact, there are 2 objects here. Our objects are of the background stream for the background audio and the commentary. So, if I was keen to hear a commentary at the moment, quite an exciting moment, let me turn down the background. So now hopefully you might be able to hear over my mic that we've turned down the background, we've only got the commentary up here. If I didn't like the commentary, if I was too fed up with them talking, I could turn that down completely and then just listen to the background ambient volume. So again, 2 different audio streams I'm using to illustrate how I can personalise not just video but also audio. And finally, I think it's worth also highlighting that we talked about on-demand content being part of an object as well. So in my view on my tablet, I have a tab called Events. And this shows me a rundown of all the things that have happened during the race. Now, of course, these are being shown as replays by the race director in the live broadcast. But if I miss some of those, I could potentially watch them again. Except the way we watch them again in an object-based world is by reconfiguring all of our screens available to make best use of the objects available. So if I perhaps go to that mechanical issue we had just now with the engine failure, that was quite interesting. So I'm going to hit replay. You'll see now it's configured both my tablet screen and the main screen to show me all the camera angles of that replay. And also now I've got the replay being edited into the live. I can still see the live in the top corner, so I'm not missing what I'm catching up with. And when that's finished, it'll transition automatically, again, driven by our platform, back into the live race, as if it were part of a live production, as if a live director were doing it. So we're personalising, but maintaining that quality and the capability and the style, the house style of the broadcaster. So I think that's pretty most of the features I wanted to show there. But you can see when we built this demonstration, we wanted to build as many of the features as we could into it. We may not necessarily offer all of these as part of a real experience, but they hopefully show some of the flexibility you can achieve by dealing with each of the components of this broadcaster's objects.
Thanks, Ian. So it is quite a detailed experience. There's an awful lot you can do. And from our position where we're thinking about the services and the way we'd like to develop the service that we offer, this was a great way of illustrating kind of all the things that you could do. And it's probably not what you'd actually try and go to market with. But there are features within this that you can pull out and we could develop for future services. Perhaps eventually we'll see them all, but we won't see them all immediately. One of the other things we experimented with in Tourmas was looking at theatre. May sound strange, but many of you may have been to a cinema to watch National Theatre Live, or perhaps the Royal Shakespeare Company, or Almeida, or the Metropolitan Opera. You may have been to see a live performance broadcast live to cinemas. When people do that, they kind of behave as if they're still at the theatre. They arrange, it's a big deal, they tend to dress up a bit more, and they have an interval, and they have wine at the interval, rather than just turning up at the cinema in the way that you normally would. So it's quite a different event, and people hold on to this theatre-ness of the event. What we were interested in was delivering theatre to home, which thankfully in a time of lockdown is something which the National Theatre and the RSC and others have done. They've made a number of their productions available to be broadcast to home. What you can't do is necessarily watch with other people who aren't in your home, which is one of the things you go to theatre for, to be sociable. So in the Theatre at Home demo, what we wanted to do was to look at the way that we could try and give you some of that back. So it's the ability to watch theatre at home, but with friends and with others. And again, we've got a short video which will explain what we did for this. The To Immerse Theatre at Home prototype offers an enhanced social experience for users watching a live or as live broadcast in a domestic context. Live theatre broadcasts are a rapidly developing market sector for cinema exhibition, and central to their success is the social experience of watching a live broadcast with family, friends and others in the cinema. The prototype aims to achieve this social experience by seamlessly integrating an enhanced broadcast, complementary and synchronised informational elements, text chat and video chat. These elements are available at different points during the broadcast, which is controlled by a timeline that echoes the social rituals of going to the theatre and of attending a live cinema broadcast. The presentation of the content is automatically coordinated across the available screens. This process is facilitated by an object-based broadcasting approach for efficient distribution. Equipped with a display screen and one or more control screens, the user purchases a ticket, enters a virtual lobby up to an hour before the performance broadcast, and invites friends to join groups for text chat and video chat. Before the performance, as well as watching introductory video and accessing information about the play and the production, the user can speak with friends who are also going to watch the play and message them either individually or collectively. Notifications indicate the start of the first act, and once the performance begins, it is accompanied by a synchronised scrolling script. Contextual information and images continue to be available. So too does text chat that could be used to push commentary on the play. During the interval, just as in the theatre, the user once again speaks with their friends watching in their homes to exchange reactions and to gossip. Notifications prepare the user for the second act with the same range of applications as was available before the interval. These should enhance and enrich the viewing experience without distracting from the impact of the performance. Once the credits roll, video chat once again allows users to explore their reactions and to plan the next play that they'll watch together from the comfort of their own sofas. So in that example, the media object that we played with most was probably real-time communications. We chose not to muck with the narrative of Hamlet too much. It's okay. And we just looked at the stuff that we could add around it. And it's this idea of using media objects in different ways to augment the story that's there. For sport, it's an emergent story. And for things like theatre, it's a great scripted story. But you can still, we think, add to the experience using the object-based approach. Of course, we have said that you can't do this using the same production mechanisms that we've always used. We're going to get a bit technical now, and the idea of this talk was when it got difficult, I handed over to Ian, and that's what I'm going to do now.
Thank you, Doug. So, yes, not too deeply technical, but I think I just want to get across a little bit about some of the challenges we faced, and this is generically about how the challenges you face when trying to architect and build an object-based broadcasting system over the top of an existing broadcast production architecture. And clearly we're going to be focused here on live and largely on sport, because that's what's been interesting us at BT. But I guess these are principles I'm trying to sort of get across, I guess, as to how changes need to happen. But also at the same time, it's important we don't suggest too drastic a change is required, because I think half of the aim here is to see how OBB can be an evolution over existing broadcast and can gradually add capabilities and able to go beyond really where some of those bespoke adaptations and enhancements that Doug talked about earlier have been delivered so far today. So my diagram here shows a bit about an end-to-end, very simplified end-to-end workflow for OBB, and I apologise it's very simplified, but it's pretty easier to talk about then. So essentially the green bits are things that happen already. We know already that we have We have content delivery, we have asset production for offline, but we also have live production of live video graphics and audio, of course, all of which go into our delivery platform. And we deliver content, of course, through IP, but also through broadcast. But in this case, I'm focusing on IP delivery, and that content delivery network might be a multicast network, or it might be, as is often the case, a unicast adaptive bitrate stream going to your tablet, your phone, or your smart TV. So in order to allow us to do object-based broadcasting, we need to think about what extra content we do as extra objects. So remember I talked about live streamed objects. So those extra live streams, that clean feed I showed you in MotoGP, or the equivalent, say, for football, needs to be distributed to the client devices. That isn't normally the case. That's normally wrapped up and locked into a program feed with all the other elements in it. So we need to separate that out, deliver that through our network. We also need to be able to deliver any other streams we talked about as well. When it comes to graphics, we need a slightly different approach to graphics, because no longer are the graphics being burned in at the head end. They're being signaled. Essentially, we need a signaling path that tells our client devices to display graphics at this point in time. And I guess this is the point I should also talk a little bit about the customer end, about the clients. So we're making an assumption here, as I showed you earlier, that we're dealing with modern devices that have capable web browsers and can run apps that are based on those browsers that leverage the HTML5, the JavaScript, the capability, standards-based capabilities that allow us to present moving images, audio, video, and the graphics that are to a level of fidelity that we require for our broadcast. So we assume that we have those graphic assets made available to our client devices. We need to then have a platform that sits in between our broadcaster and our clients and acts as the coordinator. So my new blue box down here is the important bit. We call it orchestration, and it's words used lots of times for many different things. In this case, our meaning of orchestration is really providing the wherewithal to signal how things should happen and when they should happen on our client devices. And so my next slide, I'll just go into a little bit more detail, I guess. So our platform services, that orchestration component I mentioned before, is actually split into multiple different things. And this slide, I guess I won't go into huge detail. It's designed to show that we've taken a bit of a separation of concern, the microservices type pattern approach here, I guess. And I think this makes a lot of sense for the different roles and the different functions that are required for OBB. Three that we thought were very important that came out of the TUMOS project, and we still believe very strongly in, are the separation of the orchestration of timeline, layout, and indeed bandwidth orchestration. So for timeline, that's about when it appears. So in the case of a broadcaster scheduling a graphic to appear on a screen, that's when they say it should appear. There should be an instruction sent to the client to display that graphic. Again, with the continue moving towards the personalization by the customer, the client may decide actually that they want to personalize their experience and show some extra graphics. And so therefore the timeline has to be able to handle their requests as well. Similarly, layout. Traditionally, you might imagine we could create a very flexible layout, but actually broadcasters have, as you've seen through our demonstration so far, very defined styles, very distinct set of rules on how layouts should be presented. However, there is still potentially scope for flexibility there, and so the layout element is about making decisions where they can be made about how one presents options that are flexible and personal for customers. Finally, bandwidth. This is an interesting one as well, and this is really about behind the scenes, handling some of the challenges that might be presented and problems potentially created by offering this flexibility. If in my MotoGP demo, I tried to turn on all 7, 8, 10 bike camera feeds at the same time on my tablet while watching on the TV, on some broadband connections, that may be problematic. So we need to be able to integrate the understanding of people's network capability in with the way the platform is orchestrated so that those options aren't presented. It's not possible for a particular customer to essentially break the service by personalizing it more than you might imagine them to at the design stage. Okay. So, and finally, a little bit about the software and the components. I guess I wanted to get across with this slide that the whole principle of OBB to us is about reusing standards-based and open source and standards-based techniques wherever possible. So right at the bottom, we start about a cloud platform that builds on this using hyperscale technology. So out the Amazons and Googles of this world, this is about services that sit on shared scalable infrastructure. And on top of that, we would layer container management services, so the platform as a service play that we often see today. So we use Docker, for example, to containerize our microservices and then orchestrate them using a platform called Rancher, which works very well. There are many others out there, Kubernetes, for example. And at and a layer above that, of course, we have those blue boxes I showed you earlier. And those provide the orchestration element. They also provide other things I didn't mention, like the runtime management, the support, load balancing, access management, and all the rest, all the essentials. And then again, they are largely off the shelf. And on the client side, I guess it's worth saying and reiterating that we're trying to make the best use of technology that allows access to programmatic access to present apps on clients in the most standards-based and reusable way. So there, it's about using web technologies, JavaScript, HTML5, appropriate integration layers for Android and other platforms. On top of that, of course, sit our what we call our distributed media applications, our applications that are distributed across clients and take sets of media app components from different places and present them according to the rules and the definitions we have, be they football, MotoGP, theatre, or something else. So, to finish off with, I'd like to show another little bit of a technical demo. And if we go to the next slide, I can sort of talk about the architecture in a bit more detail here. Before I show you the demo. But essentially, what I want to do really is show an example based on football, but to highlight one particular aspect. I'll use my TV screen at the bottom here, my tablet, to show you one particular aspect of the challenges associated with making all this work. So essentially, in addition to all the client development work we talked about, we have to think about how we integrate these things into the broadcast production environment. Traditionally, broadcast is all about glibly sort of cover a lot of complexity in the small number of boxes here, but we have multiple camera feeds, obviously from our venue, multiple microphones picking up audio perhaps from commentators all around the ground or around the track. We feed those into a production process that traditionally mixes those together, feeds them out, and spits them out into a contribution and distribution network, maybe with some recording along the way to create replays and comps that can be then made part of our live presentation to our viewers. However, we need to get things like our live clean feed out. We need to be able to show that. We need our extra camera feeds that I mentioned earlier. So we need a separate parallel and complementary encode distribution process through a CDN. So next door, I can't show you this, we've got that set up, and we have a little head end sitting next door that's creating the feed that's going onto the TV I showed you just now, which is a recording, actually. It's as live play out, if you like, of the Community Shield football match at Wembley last year, I believe. And so we're doing that, we're simulating what it might be as live, but essentially we have our head end and our end-to-end distribution there. But that's not enough. We also need to deal with our graphics problems. I mentioned before, we need to be able to take that signaling away from our graphics production all the way into our client. So we have our cloud platform there again. We have a version of that sitting in our local cloud. We also have importantly, our graphics scheduling system. So this may be integrated with a traditional graphics scheduling system. It may be an additional one. But this essentially is the box I'm going to show you, which essentially takes instructions from a director, this time in the broadcaster. We're going to play the role of broadcaster, and asks those graphics to be displayed on the client. Now that's all nice and easy, and I want to show you that purely from the point of view, I've not shown you that happening live yet, but as well as that, we also need to bear in mind that this distribution process, and I'm sure many of you know more better than I do about video delivery and the use of adaptive bitrate, but that involves delay. And so the latency between the real time of my graphics scheduler over here and the appearance of the graphics and the video, indeed, at the client will vary, and according to buffer fill and network and all the rest, and whether it's on Wi-Fi or a wired network. And interestingly enough, I have a device here that's on a wired network and one on a wireless network. And you will see shortly that they are not exactly in sync. If you see they're both playing the same match, although I don't know if you can see closely enough, but the tablet is, I reckon, about 7 seconds out from the main one. I think the tablet's actually ahead this time, interesting. I don't know, that's interesting. But buffer fill will dictate a variation in time. So therefore, what we have to do is handle how time codes are presented and how we manage to encode a master clock in our streams and in our platform, so that when I tell my graphics scheduler to show a graphic, it does that at the right time on the client. So I'm going to start with that now. So I'm going to pick up my, let me just switch my screen so I can show you briefly. Not a very exciting view, but all the same, it's moderately useful to see what I'm doing. This is not a professional production tool. This is simply a web page that's got some bits in it. But another thing that this shows quite nicely, I think, is metadata. So each of this is essentially a web form that demonstrates. That's if I hadn't just reset the page. Bear with me. There we are. This demonstrates essentially all the different media objects I can choose to augment my football display with graphics, and lets me specify how they're presented. So I have one here called a name super, and that traditionally was going to be Marcus Rashford. So let's change that, and let me add the metadata to make it. Let's have Doug Williams. That's his first name. I don't know how much of this you can see on that. I'm editing the text. Again, this is through a more professional tool. This is what a graphics producer might well be doing. So there, we've set up Doug as our goal scorer. It's the first goal of his season, so I'm going to show that graphic. And what we'll do now is we'll switch, and in about 20 seconds, 30 seconds time, if we switch to the TV, you'll hopefully see a graphic appear. While it's doing that, I'll put another one up. I'll put the match ID up as well while we're at it, so you can see that come in a little bit later. But what you should hopefully appreciate happening now is that the signaling has happened, but the client is now waiting for the appropriate point on the timeline for that graphic to be presented. And with a bit of luck, this is one of those. There we are. There's Doug Williams. Hopefully you can see him on the TV now, and shortly afterwards, a bit of luck, you'll see him appear on the tablet. Possibly, if the tablet's behaving today. There he is. There we go. The tablet is behind. I thought it would be. And shortly afterwards, you'll probably see the match ident. Here we go. Here comes the match ident coming up that I scheduled before. So I'm going to get rid of that one now. And I think as my final pièce de résistance, I will show. I'll take away Doug's big goal scorer, and I'll put in a substitution. There we go. So hopefully in a few seconds' time, you'll see some graphics change. Hopefully this gets across the point I'm trying to make, that we have to integrate this in such a way that it's in sync with the main playout. We have new tools that handle metadata associated with our media objects, and this is really augmenting and helping us to allow the world of traditional graphics production to move into the world of object-based production. There goes my graphic. And if we wait a few more seconds, we'll see that substitution come up on the left-hand side down there, hopefully. And you'll see it on the tablet changing shortly as well. OK, hope that made some sense.
Thank you, Ian. So we are just about there. We are hopefully within the time. Thank you for bearing with us. I'm just quickly going to recap. So this is about the level of it. We're telling you, and it's an assertion, but we think there's evidence to support it, that TV is becoming more personal. We think that can be a really good thing, but as we've just seen, we need to adapt workflows to accommodate that change. To assert that it's a good thing, it's not just enough for me to show you the things that we've done from a laboratory and experimental perspective. It's worth looking what's happening outside other companies, other productions as well. The BBC have got something on their service called BBC Taster, where you can download some software which enables you to watch something synchronized with somebody else. So if we think back to that theatre challenge where we want to watch a video on demand asset together with somebody else who's in a different place, but we want everything to be synchronized, BBC Together, available on Taster, enables you to do that. The BBC have experimented with reconfigurable narratives. They're not the only ones, but they did their 1000th episode of BBC Click as a reconfigurable story. Amazon, they may have come across their X-ray feature, which enables you to see additional metadata that's associated with virtually every scene of every film that they've got. It tells you who's in that film. It tells you what other films they've been in. This is information which is available, it's metadata, it's wrapped up with the media content. When Amazon started broadcasting football, just before Christmas last year, they enabled this feature which gave you two audio options. You remember Ian's audio options where we showed you that you could have with or without the bike noise or just the commentary? The same sort of thing. It's treating audio as an object. This is a live service. Have I gone down? I've gone the wrong way. Bandersnatch, some of you may have heard of. It's an interactive story available on Netflix. There are a number of them. It's a dystopian story, a bit disturbing if you watch it, but it starts as a pretty normal film, but then you get these pop-ups which ask you just to make binary choices. What do you want to do? These start very innocent. What do you want for breakfast? Cornflakes or Weetabix. But later they get a bit more sinister. But it just drags you in and it shows you a way that you can use reconfigurable stories to create a different kind of dynamic. Netflix have kept going with this, but if you look at the titles here, they're pretty much targeting a younger audience. You'll also be aware that we're just coming out of lockdown. Football's just coming back, but it's being played without crowds. Many of you will have spotted that there is crowd noise, and this is synthesized crowd noise, which is available to sort of try and put some of the atmosphere back. As we were doing that, no one knew whether really people would like it. We came to the judgment that it probably was good, but it's possible that some people didn't like it. So the option to remove it is there. This is using audio as objects and enabling you to make choices about whether you have it or not. Sky and BT have also both accelerated their ideas of watch together so that you can watch the game together with a friend, just like that idea of the BBC one at the beginning. These examples where we are making TV more personal, adapting it to your context, to the people watching, the devices you're watching it on, is coming through. And it's not just us asserting it from the labs here and from innovative productions, they're also becoming much more mainstream services. So we assert that the future of TV is personal. The other thing that TV will remain is hugely collaborative and dependent upon lots and lots of people. It's been our pleasure to talk to you about the future of TV, but we need to remind you that it wasn't just us.
Indeed, and yes, a few credits. I think many of those there are many more people than just here, I guess. But obviously, we should thank our team and indeed our colleagues in all of the collaborative projects, particularly 2Immerse, which we've drawn heavily on in this presentation, and indeed those who are no longer at BT who really started this off many years ago. And I guess finally, it's worth saying that it's an interesting testament to the development of all the internet technologies and the capabilities we talked about earlier, that we're running this as a seven video sources, 3 camera shoot this evening with one person, John, next door, who's driving all of it through a fantastic tool called OBS, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But yes, live streaming makes a lot of things possible, and it's been very interesting to show you stuff this evening. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks. Thanks, Ian and Doug, for an excellent presentation. And also my thanks to John behind the scenes for the excellent camera work. So we'd like to move into Q&A now, and I'm going to hand over to George Williamson, who's going to take us through Q&A. So over to you, George.
Right, running through the questions, we've got a large number of questions, and apologies if we don't manage to prioritise your particular question, but we will try to cover as many as we can through this audio at this point in time. Can I ask a question here? Is a technical question about the latency impact of object-based broadcasting relative to a traditional broadcasting model? And latency, they assert, is critical in live sports, especially where betting is involved. Can you comment on that, please?
I guess I can take that one. Broadly speaking, we're not changing the delivery mechanisms. So I would say that there's very little additional latency added by using an object-based approach, because essentially we are, although I would say the demonstrations we've shown currently are using approaches such as adaptive streaming and HTTP streaming, which are traditionally of the higher end of latency than perhaps multicast or terrestrial broadcast or satellite broadcast. However, adaptive streaming technology is evolving, and some of you may well be aware of low latency dash, and there are developments in the standards and in the delivery in the commercial arena to reduce that delay down from sort of maybe 20-30 seconds, as we saw here, down to single figures of seconds, and there's nothing that stops OBB being used in that environment either. So really, it's not about OBB limiting things. It's really we would follow where we go with the delivery technology. Doug, do you want to say any more about that?
No, I won't say any more.
I have a question about how object-based broadcasting might help people who are differently abled and disabled. I just wondered if you might say something about that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one, and that's one of the things that I think is probably one of the earlier ways that this is going to be used. Because you can use this object-based approach to select an additional video, you could choose to have someone signing, and you could add it or not. You could, if you needed subtitles, you could have them or not, and you could make that selection, and the idea of subtitles or somebody signing, or indeed the audio things that we've just been looking at, You can change the audio. If you get rid of the ambient, it becomes easier to hear the dialogue. There's lots of things that you could do, treating audio as objects, treating additional video as objects, treating text as objects, which can help to make TV much more accessible. So that's a really good use.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I guess, I think it's also worth flagging that I think there are opportunities seen. We work with people who are interested in the what I call accessibility opportunities, but I think who see that the fact that one can deal with the rendering and handling the individual objects at a client level, rather than having to encode them at the head end, adds a lot of opportunity and flexibility. For example, how you might present a signer. So for those hard of hearing, having a signed presentation in synchrony with video is very interesting. But I think this allows much more flexibility, perhaps in the use of transparency and alpha channel and the placement of that signer in a way that is most suited for the audience that needs it, but also may not otherwise be chosen, maybe more disruptive if it was in everyone's broadcast. So there are lots of opportunities there. We're really excited about that opportunity, and in some ways also it means that it opens up what might traditionally be seen as accessibility features as features that anyone might want to use. It's not just for those who have different abilities. It actually, all of us might find some of those options more interesting and useful.
Okay, moving on, you showed some theatrical productions, and I have a comment here from a couple of people where they note that live streaming of theatrical productions has been technically possible for some time now. Are there other non-technical barriers to such multicasts, and can you comment on, how the general preparedness of the audience for this might have been changed by the COVID crisis?
That's a really good question. I know that there's a lot of debate. The people that we've worked with in the past, John Wyver from Illuminations, is kind of all over this at the moment. I don't know who knows, right? Clearly, I think this could be a moment that changes the mind of the rights holders to think that perhaps we should be broadcasting directly to home. Perhaps if COVID goes on too long, perhaps that's something they'll have to consider anyway, because if you can't broadcast to cinemas, perhaps you have to take on board this opportunity to broadcast at home. It's a kind of in their mindset, it's in their gift, it's their rights. They own the rights to the way they broadcast it. At the moment, they've chosen to curate it more to cinemas. Clearly, they are rethinking that for the pandemic situation. Whether that thought process will continue beyond, you'd have to ask the National Theatre, you'd have to ask the RSC. But there seems to be quite...
Without being speaking from a position of much authority, but it might be worth just adding to that one possible issue there that I have heard of in the past, may not apply to everything, is that for archive material, where if say we wanted to produce an object-based version of a previously shot production, some of the rights to that, the rights that were negotiated at the time of production may not apply to the delivery mechanisms we want to use today. So
that depends whether you're the RSC or the NT, National Theatre. So the rights agreements with the players and the theatres are different depending on who's doing the production. So for some of those, it's very difficult to gain access to their old archive and agree to broadcast it to homes because that wasn't in the original rights agreement. But it's certainly something they must be thinking very hard about.
I have a question here from Alex Wood. Consumer devices often have many features that the consumer never uses. How much do viewers engage with the object-based broadcasting options? And presumably how many of the features might never be used?
Well, I think when you look at the MotoGP, that kind of speaks loudly to that example, that there were lots and lots of features, and it even, it took us quite a long time to learn to use them all, and we were very close to the people who were developing them. And that's why I don't think throwing everything at it at once is what's going to happen. I think you're going to get very simple choices to slowly introduce people to things which have perhaps got the biggest benefit, and perhaps particular biggest benefit for certain audiences, perhaps for accessibility is one of the early ones. It's true. Who knows? Who knows, George? Who knows how many of these features will be used? That's something that we have to explore. But I think the way to To gain acceptance is to go slowly, to go with simple steps and with a clear benefit. And then when people have adopted that and they know that that's a possibility, then they'll perhaps be ready for a more advanced one. And then we'll learn to use menu structures and things that allow people to interact more normally and casually. Perhaps using voice might be more obvious. You know, who is in that film could lead to the X-ray feature that we see in Amazon coming up. Who else? What other films have they been in? Perhaps Alexa will start listening and Amazon will start showing us. And we won't really think about it as a feature. We'll just hold it as a conversation that we're having with our telly.
A couple of points to build on that, I guess. When we trialled MotoGP, albeit with about 50 households, wasn't it, or so, it showed that different genres will demand different levels of excitement and engagement with the devices than others. So a motorsport genre tends to have people and fans who are avidly excited about features and facts and figures and data, and they're very happy to configure themselves a very, very, very busy screen to work with that otherwise might not be the same for football. So I think the learning there is talk to the experts who are the producers and the creatives who produce for that sport and understand their audience very well and choose the appropriate features at the right time. Interesting adverts we're getting now. Good. The other thing to note is I think that it isn't all about multi-screen necessarily, and we've shown lots of multi-screen examples, and so don't think that OBB means you have to be doing your phone at the same time as the TV. It could be just a TV application. It could be just a phone application and you're out and about. It's about allowing that personalization, but it doesn't have to be always multi-screen.
I think we must be coming close to the end of time. So I've got a question here which actually illustrates that there might be a range of different kinds of users with different levels of proactivity. And I have one from Debasis Mukherjee, who asks, under object-based broadcasting, will it be feasible to assemble metadata from your library with a view to organise a personalised event? For example, a cricket match where Bradman, Brian Lara and Ben Stokes were all playing. An answer to that particular one. This is a more active participation, obviously.
That comes back to the sort of the reconfigurable narrative sort of story that we had. And it's possible, but I don't think it would really be that compelling unless you could construct some kind of magazine program which showed you all of these things going on. Not in a hurry.
Depends how much you pay for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, someone's asked a question, why am I dealing with all of the questions? I am actually asking the questions that are presented in the QA. We've taken a decision to ensure that that the questions are presented in a way in which the speakers can deal with them more straightforwardly.
So George, perhaps we just take one more question and before we close.
I'll look to someone who's just asked me again for a particular question. Unfortunately, there are far more questions than we have time to answer. So I will try to deal with any question which I think will address the needs of a number of audiences. Lots of the OBM experiences are sold as trials of concepts. MotoGP for Immerse, to Immerse, BBC R&D's Click et al. On Taster, and to an extent Bandersnatch. Although all lightweight approaches to Prime Video's X-Ray, Stadium FX and sport commentary customization buck this trend. What happens next to move OBM experiences towards business as usual? And what do you think BT will do next? That was from Sam MG.
I think we probably know, but we can't tell you. BT, if you listen to Jamie Hindhoff, who's COO of BT Sport, he's absolutely behind object-based media, and he's convinced that the idea of personalising the offer that we bring is a good thing. I'm not going to stand here and tell you what our next move is. I don't entirely know it, but even if I did, I shouldn't tell you. I know that things are afoot, and I know that this is absolutely the direction that BT Sport is wishing to take the way that we do the productions. The first thing we have done, and I think you can see it with the sports broadcast, is the audio, where you can choose to have with or without that crowd noise. But there will be other examples coming soon. Also the Watch Together, that's already there. So these examples are there, and we will be building on these as we move forward.
I see there's quite a lot of questions, and I think what we'll do is we'll consider those offline, and when we upload the video, we'll try and put some answers to the questions that remain. So my thanks to Doug and Ian for such a thought-provoking and interesting presentation, and again to John Bicknell for the camera work behind the scenes. And I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. So thank you for your time, and please keep an eye out for our next webinar. As I mentioned earlier, it's 5G Demystified on the 6th of August with Professor Andy Sutton. So please can you register for that one in advance and to make sure of your place. So I think with that, I'll close the webinar, and thank you very, very much for your time. Much appreciated, and we'll see you all on the next webinar. So thank you for joining.